Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality, and is about discovering your place in this great universe, from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guests, in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life, and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us here this evening. Tonight we are going to be talking about the purpose of our life, the mission of our moment, perhaps the inspiration of our heart and our soul. How are we navigating our days? How are we showing up in the world? Are we becoming better human beings? Are we becoming very busy with the world around us? Perhaps we are saying, I need to attain, I need to become, I need to get there, and it's all about my legacy. Truly what we're talking about, can we understand that we have today as today's breath? That's truly what we have. And enjoy it, feel it, be with those we love, and cherish the moment in time. Tomorrow is never promised to anyone, and so many people will say, but nope, I've got it good, I'm doing everything, I'm all in alignment, and I know exactly where I'm going and how to get there. Awesome. But today we'll be talking about enjoying the moment and stopping and breathing in and feeling into what is our story about, what are our ancestor stories about, what is the land that we live upon all about, and how are we choosing to be able to be present. Today my guest is Judith Valente. Her book is The Italian Soul, How to Savor the Full Joys of Life. Judith, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Jeanette. It's an honor to be with you.
So glad to have you, because I look back at, your book is very popular these days, and we say, how did we disconnect from living life like that many decades ago? Or perhaps maybe many of us have never even engaged in it, so we've always been on this rabbit wheel, so to speak. Perhaps?
Yes, when I went to Italy, I felt as though I found what I had been looking for, which was more balance in my life. And what I found in Italy when I began to make extended stays there, which the book is based on, my extended stays there, that, Italians are on to something. They work to live. They don't live to work. And I'm speaking as a recovering workaholic and an overachiever. And the Italians taught me so much. May I give you just one example, one story of transformation that happened to me in Italy? I write a column every Sunday, and I put it out on medium.com and on my Judith Valente website. And I was invited by a friend, my Italian teacher actually, to come to Sunday dinner at her home. Sunday dinner is still a sacrosanct tradition in Italy. Nonna and Nono will be there. Grandma and Grandpa will be there. Zia and Zio will be there. Aunt and Uncle will be there. And sometimes even ex-spouses and ex-son-in-laws will be invited to the table. So it's a big deal. Well, I hadn't finished my column yet that Sunday, and I brought my computer along to the Sunday lunch. And I pulled it out, and I started typing at the coffee table. Well, I saw my friend's Italian mother kind of looking at me with this puzzled look. And I said, well, I'm just trying to finish some writing before the meal begins. And she just stared at me and said, it's Sunday.
Right.
But the real lesson came later that day when we had this, 2.5, 3 hour lovely leisurely meal. And then we went and took a long leisurely stroll along the Adriatic, because my friend's apartment was near the Adriatic Sea. And what I learned was that I was able to get my column done later in the day, still in time to send it out to all my subscribers, but still have this joyful time with my friends. I didn't have to sacrifice that beautiful time with friends to do my work. I could do it all. And that was a big lesson to me. Not ever to put my work ahead of the people that mean something to me, that mean so much to me in my life.
Yeah, I think the time of technology now has really taken over a lot of family life. I know I see it quite often. Cell phones are out all the time. And, I would look at myself, someone will come and they'll be talking to me, and I will sit there and I will literally look into their eyes the entire time they're speaking. It's always been that way for me. I've been that way, all the time. I can't think of anything different. So in other words, nothing distracts me from connecting with their soul and listening and engaging with them. Yet I would say 99% try to look away. They are disconnected. They just can't keep themselves focused long enough to be able to say, this engagement is important to me. And I think that's very much, I don't know if it's an American thing. I've been in Italy also. I've seen it differently there. However, I do believe that it's really something we need to work at and pay attention to, because if not, then really what is the purpose of the conversation or engaging in the first place, right?
Well, Italians are so big on relationships, and it's so easy to make friends in Italy. You just walk out your door, and you see the same people in the piazza every day sitting on the benches, the same people in the cafes. It's very hard to be anonymous in Italy. I grew up outside New York City. I don't know where you grew up, Dr. Jeanette, but I grew up outside New York City where, the restaurant and deli tables are so close you could knock knees with the person at the next table. But they're not going to engage in a conversation with you. That would be an invasion of your privacy and their privacy. Well, that would never happen in Italy. You couldn't sit down on at a table that close to somebody and not have them start a conversation with you. And I know that you're very interested in end-of-life issues, and it's very interesting that there's a lot of talking that goes on in Italy. Just, being in the piazzas, talking out your window to the person across the way or the person in the apartment next to yours, talking across balconies. There's all this talking that goes on. And I want to give you an example of how I think it relates to being healthier and living longer. An interesting statistic is that Italy has the second highest life expectancy in the world. Among European countries, only Switzerland has a higher life expectancy. Italians live to the age of 84, which is 5 years longer than Americans live. And Americans are like 38th or 48th on the ratings of longevity of their population. And that's terrible for an advanced country. We're behind Albania. We're behind Panama. We're behind the Czech Republic. But I have a sense that it has to do, people live longer because they have that sense of belonging. My former landlord was a man in his 80s, a man named Franco. And he'd get out of his bed every day, and he'd put on a fedora and a leather jacket, and he'd walk down to the Cafe Palace. And he'd meet all these other retired people there. And they would just talk for an hour and have coffee and read the paper together. And I really, truly believe that this sense of belonging leads to the greater longevity in Italy, adds to it.
It's so totally different, I think, where you live, where you've been brought up, where you exist currently. I live in New Orleans. I've been here for decades, since like the late 60s. And I will tell you, it's so different here. People come, they visit here, they leave, and they say there's no place like it. Because here everybody does speak to everyone. You could go, you get on the bus, and as soon as you get on the bus, it's good morning. You're exclaiming to everybody on the bus, good morning. Your presence is shown. You've been seen. You go into the doctor's office, just as you write in the book, everybody's talking amongst themselves. There's no privacy, so to speak, Like, we don't have these barriers or these boundaries. We don't care, who you are, what age, what color, what race, what anything. There's no such thing. It does not even enter into our mind. You could be a celebrity here and just walk amongst anybody. Nobody would even care. It doesn't even matter. They would just still talk to you as a regular person. So we don't have this a sense of status, so to speak, or this sense of separation. Here, everything is truly together and everybody is talking together. Here, you may not live as long because of the health conditions, but here, you live a full life. Yes. Everybody knows you. Everybody speaks and shares, and it's just the way it is. So I think definitely it's where you live and how you can bring these concepts into your area and into your life, right?
And I would say, choose a place to live like New Orleans. I mean, New Orleans is a very European city in many ways. Mm-hmm. You have the French influence, the Spanish influence, the Creole influence. Choose to live in a place like that, and or try to create that atmosphere where you are.
Right.
I think the onus is on us as well to create community. Mother Teresa, now Saint Teresa of Calcutta, when she first came to the United States, she said the great American illness is not heart disease or cancer. It's loneliness. Mm-hmm. And something that just stopped me in my tracks, I was listening to NPR a while back about a man who wrote a book about walking from New York City, I think it was, to Washington, D.C. And it was a very hot day, and he went up to a man whom he saw standing in front of the man's house. The man was standing in front of his house. And he said, do you know where I can get a drink of water? And the man said, oh, yeah, just go down 2 blocks. There's a store. Mm-hmm. Now, why wouldn't that man say, let me give you a drink of water? Here's a bottle of water. Mm-hmm. What have we come to in this country where we can't even offer somebody a cup of water, which is in the Gospels. Whoever gives even a cup of water to a stranger will be blessed. So, there's a lot in Italy that I found. I was a student of monastic life for many, many years now, trying to live a more contemplative life myself, a more reflective life myself. And what I found in Italy, why I called the book The Italian Soul, is because I found that there's so much innate in the Italian lifestyle that reflects monastic values. For example, listening is a big monastic value. Community is a big monastic value. Consensus building and hospitality. And I saw all of that in the daily lives of Italians, which is, why I think I became so attracted to that lifestyle and wanted to write about it.
I think it's truly about being able to honor soul. In other words, we aren't talking about the humanness. We are truly talking about, can you touch the soul? I know for myself, I moved into this apartment about 10 years ago. I started looking out the door, and I would see a woman. She would go up the stairs to her apartment, and she never really engaged and never crossed my path, even though it was very close. And then I noticed she hadn't been coming out for a while, and I would see a lot of delivery people go up there. And then I noticed I'd only see one delivery person. Then it was about a period of a month or two, and I didn't see anyone go up there at all, and I said, something's wrong. And it's like I wanted to go up, and everybody's, mind your own business, stay in your own realm. You can't go up and knock on somebody's door, blah, 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 blah. Mind your own business. I said, well, you know what, I'm going to do this once, and I'm just going to wait and see. Well, about a month later, there was a pickup truck that backed up to the door, and it was just dumping everything in, and I went out and I spoke to them, and I said, oh, what happened? Did she move or whatever? They said, no, she died in her apartment, and we're just cleaning it out. Yeah. And that touched me so deeply. I said, I vowed I never would ever let that happen to any other elder. And my work, working with patients at end of life, it says that will never happen again. I know for myself, everybody that moves in, hey, you're new here, awesome. Or I had someone that I was helping. I watched him go up the stairs, and he couldn't get up, and I was helping him. And then he came back, and he says, well, I'm going to the store. I said, hey, pick me up with some flowers. And he says, well, what kind? I said, a white lily, because it smells so wonderful. Do you know that it's been 3 years now, and every time he goes to the store, he brings back a white lily for me every time. But yet I turn around, and then I say, oh, I just made some meatballs. How about some? And I give them to him. So it's about being able to, how can you connect and create this engagement, even if they aren't in your same space? I have sweet, soft pretzels that I just bought, and there was like 12 in the box, and it's just myself, and it's like, I watch the kids go around. I say, here, take these home to your mom. Tell her how to put them in the oven. And there was another lady that moved next door, and I'm going to give her the rest of them. And it's just about being able to say, why do you choose to hold on to everything? To be able to claim it as your possession and not give freely. And I think that is definitely a custom in Europe, that people give and they take, and there's this giving back and paying forward and being able to engaging with others. I just don't understand how many Americans have gotten into the cycle of, it's mine, don't touch me, go away. Perhaps. We've moved into an attitude of scarcity as opposed to abundance. We have abundance, but we're listening to people who are telling us there's a scarcity, and you've got to keep these people out, and you've got to hold on to what you have because those people might take it away, and that's a prescription, I think, for really a downfall of a society. We saw that, we've seen it over and over, the Roman Empire, the Egyptian Empire. They all fall when they get into this practice of me against them, and I've got to hold on to what I have, and you can't have it. But also, too, I think in your book, too, that I think that's important, Judith, you spoke about quality over quantity. We don't have to have all of this stuff anymore. I know for myself, I've been writing a lot of stuff about, exiting. When you pass on and you leave all this stuff behind, it's like you're holding it on to things for a certain reason or purpose. But when your energy leaves this world, the energy leaves that item, too. So it's sort of like, it's going to go out to the dumpster. I'm sorry. Everybody needs to know when you pass on, the garbage truck comes and everything does go out, irregardless of what you may think otherwise. So I think the idea is, can we honor what we have, right? Yeah. Well, there's a beautiful Italian expression that your listeners might be interested in. Poco ma buono. Little but good. So, for example, buy a good pair of shoes that will last a long time. Buy a jacket that will last a long time. I have a pair of shoes I bought in Siena, Italy, in 1992 when I was studying over there. I'm still wearing them, Dr. Jeanette. Right. Poco ma buono is a really good prescription for not having so much waste and excess. I mean, two of the businesses that didn't suffer during the pandemic were dollar stores and these storage facilities, because people could buy lots of junk they don't need at the dollar store, and then they need to store what they don't use and they don't need and didn't need to buy in the first place. So, I love that expression, poco ma buono. Less but good quality. Right. And also, too, I think the idea about having excess, I live in a hurricane-prone area. I stayed for all the hurricanes. We lost all of our stuff, all of those cycles. And we get into the pattern that we don't need to keep anything. If it comes tomorrow and it all goes out the door, oh, so be it. And it doesn't even resonate with us anymore. And I think that sometimes, depending upon where you live, you have, just as you said, you have stashes of stuff in your attic and your cellars and all this other stuff, for a rainy day or for a purpose or posterity or legacy or whatever. I think the idea is that what is the story you're telling yourself? And I think that's truly the message of your book, The Italian Soul. What is the story you're telling yourself about your life, your value of life, but your value of self, perhaps? Yeah. Well, there's another expression, fare bella figura in Italian, to create a beautiful figure or to create a beautiful impression. And when I was going to school in Siena, I rented a room from a woman who was a widow in her 50s. And just to go to the bakery or the local department store, she would put on lipstick. She would put on a blouse with a scarf. And it was about presenting a beautiful impression to the world.
I grew up in northern New Jersey where, some of the mothers would run to the grocery store with pink curlers in their hair and a kerchief around their head. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. And you would never do that in Italy because it's about the impression you want to present to the world. And a friend of mine explained it to me in a very beautiful way, Dr. Jeanette. She said, it's not just about creating a facade. No. It's about respecting yourself enough to want to put your best face forward and respecting others as well to present your best face. So in the end, it's about love to create a beautiful impression. And I thought that was another beautiful saying that I learned in Italy.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what I think also, too, Judith? You talk about lessons from the dark era. We talk about the wars and stuff. I've been sharing this on the radio, for over a decade now. And I say, when we talk about our ancestors and their stories, and they say, oh, but that was then, and, all this whole idea of trauma and all this other stuff that's going on, I'll say, honey, that was the way the world was then. Can you just honor it and respect it for what it is and know that their breath gave you life? And they're like, oh, no, but they did this to me and they did that to me. You don't hear that in other countries, or you don't hear it here in the South either. But you do hear that in many stories that humans are sharing. All of this happened to me. Now I need to be fixed and I need to be healed. I think what we're missing is the healing and the love coming from your country, your community, your engagements with others? Or does it have to come from outside yourself because you're so stuck? Right. What do you think?
No, I think you're definitely onto something. I think it's really important for people to go back to their origins in order to understand themselves and understand the people that affected their lives. I'm a really huge believer. Italy has a program now, something like the phrase is "return to your roots."
Right.
I mean, whether your roots were in Portugal, or Brazil, or Spain, or wherever, Ukraine, I think it's important to go back there at some point and understand where the people came from. What did those ancestors go through? I know, I often thought of particularly my father's parents. I didn't know them as well, but as my mother's parents, but I always thought of them as sort of poor laborers, poor, uneducated laborers. And then I actually went back and sort of traced the route that they had to take to come to the United States. So they had to go from, the north central part of Italy. They had to get on a train. They had to get to Naples, which was a bigger city than either of them had ever seen. And then they had to get on a boat and cross an ocean and arrive at a city where they knew no one. And they had just gotten married.
Right.
And, to me, when I realized, all the energy that it took and the courage that it took for them to get there, I thought, wow, these people had to be very, very smart as well as courageous just to survive.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm a big believer in going back to your roots.
Yeah, because I think what's happening now, I think we're finding in the year 2025, people are reflecting on their past, but they're looking at it with the eyes of today. And we can't do that because when we're looking at it as the eyes of today, we really have a lot of filters and a lot of judgments that we're stuck with. We can't really see that. We don't know truly what traveling, as you shared about your ancestors, really is about, or what poverty or illiteracy is about. People can't even understand what that means. Oh, no, that's over there, that's bad, that's this, that. It's all this judgment filters. And I think when you can erase some of those filters that you see the world with, you start to be able to grow inside, really connect to people, and as you shared about going back to your roots, but you also connect to others and yourself in a totally different level. Isn't that the real goal we're talking about?
Yeah, I think travel is a good remedy for some of that, because when you're traveling, you often have to depend on the kindness of strangers, and travel will open your eyes. You're in a new you're in a new environment, so your senses are on higher alert. And people talk about these gap years that kids are taking like there's something bad, about it, that the kids just don't want to go to work, so they take a gap year. But no, I think they're learning quite a bit if they take a gap year and travel. I wouldn't trade having studied, abroad, my junior year abroad in France. I wouldn't trade that for anything. And certainly I wouldn't trade these extended stays in Italy, which has, really made me understand myself and my own country much better than I would have.
It's almost as if you went on a shamanic journey and put the parts of your soul back together, don't you think?
Yes, exactly. A good way to put it.
Yeah. We see it a lot of times. I have a lot of relatives who have Italian ancestral lineage, and I always loved to go to my aunt's house because my uncle would take the roast, all the time to his mother, and the day before, and she would coat all of the for porchetta and everything, and I would get it, and I could never recreate that moment in time. And I would always see a recipe, and I would make it and everything. I said, I know what's missing. It was her love in putting it into the food. That's what was missing.
That's the secret ingredient, yeah.
Right. It wasn't about, let's get a recipe and try to do it again. It's about the love of it. I think of myself also, too. Once a year, I make this crazy recipe for this koshi, it's called. It's Polish stuffing that you use at Thanksgiving time. And it's made out of crazy ingredients. It's made out of Crisco and onions and potatoes and rice. A very poverty kind of recipe. However, I make it every single year, and they're like, oh, my God, we're not going to eat this. This is unhealthy, blah, blah, blah. I said, you either choose to be able to connect and be able to engage in the moment, or else you can go out to the restaurant, see you later. You know what I mean? But I'll make it every single year. And the funniest story about it, Judith, is that every single year, it only has like 6 ingredients. For some reason, I always mess up one ingredient. Either I forget it, I have to go back out to the store, or I forget to not put enough in, or I forget it all of a sudden, and I have to take it out of the oven, scoop it all back out, mix the stuff in, and put it back in again. It's like this funny process, and I'm thinking, hey, I'm 70 years old. Why do I have to do this? I didn't learn this by now, but I can always hear in my ears my ancestors laughing, and they're like, oh, isn't that funny? You remembered us. And it was like, yes, I did. And it just had that sense of thanks that you could feel deep inside. Isn't that what you want to be able to create by this engagement if you're talking about in the Italian soul?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think the meal table itself is very important. And I would like to encourage people to look at their dinner table, their meal table, as a sacred place. Because it truly is. It should be a place of communion for people. When I was younger, I had friends who had kids in school, and one was off to soccer, and one was off to ballet or whatever, dance or whatever, and the family didn't eat together, or they ate all different things because the kids didn't like. One kid didn't like this thing, and the other kid didn't like that thing. I think we need to. A simple practice that we could get back to is just the sanctity and reverence for the meal table. That, every time you sit down, it's almost a Eucharistic experience. And you see that in Italy, that, food is taken very seriously. The ingredients that you put into the food is taken seriously. There's a lot of emphasis on farm to table, using fresh ingredients right in your, that goes right to your table. So I think there's a few simple practices we could start with if we want to start savoring the joys of life like an Italian.
Right. You know, it's so funny you say about the farm to table. I remember growing up in northeastern Pennsylvania, and we didn't have stores where I lived. It was, you went to the butcher for the meat. You would go to the bakery. The dairy, you would go to the local dairy farm. Everything, you know, the vegetables were in little farm stands where you just put in like $1 or $2 in a little box and take what you wanted or whatever. And we lived like that. And I believed that since, you know, up until my, you know, early 20s, I lived like that every single day and didn't know anything different. So I think once that's been ingrained in our earlier life, that's what we kind of propagate forward. The difference is that now in the year 2025, how many kids are actually living like that already? You know, or how many kids don't even know what that means to be able to go to a dairy farm to get the milk? Well, where does the milk come from? Well, you know, Walmart. You know what I mean? I even had spoken to one of my grandkids. I said, we're going to do some crafts today. And we were using a lot of things we were recycling. And they said, well, but we could just buy this. And I says, no, it's about the joy of being able to create something from nothing. And I think that's a huge goal, is what can you create in your life from what is present? Isn't that the purpose of living in the first place?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it all comes down to relationships. You know, when you're doing these things, you're also building relationships, and that is an antidote to the great American illness of loneliness. The former U.S. Surgeon General just wrote a book about what he called the epidemic of loneliness in the United States, and I really think it's up to each one of us to try to address that in some way. I mean, who is a person that you were friends with that you haven't been in touch with for a while? You know, can you give that person a call or run by their house if you happen to live in the same town? I mean, there's these small little things that we can do to get the process going in the right direction again.
Yeah. It's truly, let's talk about kindness in closing. I think kindness has really exited. People are saying, yes, I'm kind all the time, or they're using the word as a fad. They really don't even understand what the word means, perhaps?
Well, you know, Dostoevsky said the world will be saved by beauty, but you could also say the world will be saved by kindness. And I think that's something that we need to be conscious of every minute. You know, what is every minute we're out and about, what is a moment for offering a random act of kindness? And I think our country would not be so fragmented and discombobulated as it is right now if we just were kinder to one another on a very local, very basic level.
Absolutely. You know, a lot of times people will say there's kindness, but, well, I'm kind of like, I save my love for the people that are close to me. And I'll say that's really a conditional love. What if we all expressed unconditional love? We don't need to know if someone's hurting before we offer something to them. We don't need to know if somebody's alone before we go and connect with them. We do not need to know someone else's story. They may have millions of dollars in the bank, but if we're seeing them on the corner, we'll say, can I hold your hand while I walk across the street? That's unconditional. Can we learn to live as an unconditional being, perhaps?
Right. I totally agree with you that, you know, if we just help the people closest to us, or, what is it that Jesus said, even the pagans, will love their neighbor and their family. But if you love your enemy, then that's saying something. If you love the stranger, then that's something.
Yes, absolutely. You know, Judith, I think that what we did today was to really explore the concepts that perhaps have been around a long time. Maybe we've kind of forgotten about them. We may be kind of giving a little bit, oh, yeah, I do it, but not really all the time. What we're offering today is to be able to look at your life in reflection and say, how can I live a more engaged and fulfilled life, perhaps?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we've touched upon a lot of just small steps that can be taken and small changes in attitudes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Judith, can you share with the listeners how to find out more information about your work?
Oh, I'd love for people to go to my website, judithvalente.com. All of my columns or blogs, whatever you want to call them, are on the web. Go on the website. I put out a newsletter, a monthly newsletter called How to Be, and it's free. And if people want to subscribe, they could email me at jvalente17@msn.com. And I'd love for them to pick up The Italian Soul, my latest book. It's a pretty easy read. It's a quick read. They can get it anywhere. They order it from their local bookstore. I like to support local independent bookstores, but also Amazon and thrift books and Barnes & Noble. And I have a new collection of poetry out that people may be interested in called How to Be a Contemplative. You see, I never stray very far from that theme of how to be a more contemplative person. And I wrote little reflections to go with each of the poems in the book, which I hope people will find as a resource for deepening the interior life.
Very good. Well, Judith, it was such a pleasure to have you with us here today. I think sometimes we need some gentle inspiration and maybe just some kind words to know that maybe we have strayed, maybe we haven't, but be able to get back on the track, yes?
Yes, indeed. And thank you so much for inviting me to come on.
Thank you so much for joining us. If you'd like to find out more information about Judith Valente, again, the book is The Italian Soul, How to Savor the Full Joys of Life. Please do click on the link on the bottom of today's show page to go directly to her website for more information. And it is about being able to say, everyone is the same. We keep putting up all of these walls and pressuring and putting people out there using our judgments, our filters, and our concerns. When we really need it, it's truly about unconditional love. How can we start excavating that and saying that everybody is just a soul and a spirit, just as self, and be able to nourish that and be able to live a fuller life? Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher. Until tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit drjeanettegallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.